what do we all think that happens and matters the most at the end of life? I mean, I truly believe that we're a product of our environment. We've all become who we are because of some of the experiences that we've all witnessed, that we've all enjoyed throughout our lives. Now, I too have, in fact, become an advocate for enjoying life, an advocate for making the most out of every situation, because I too have lived with many great times and many ups and downs and not such good times. Many of us all have our crosses to bear. It's a cliche saying, and a lot of people like to throw terminology and phrases like that around just to be cute. But realistically, a big reason why we do what we do, decisions we make, particularly as we get older, are decisions that we come to because of this evolution in our perspective and our thought processes. Many people ask, why are you retiring so early? Is it because you can? Are you rich? I'm not rich. Why would you retire early? Are you going to be bored while you're retired? Absolutely not. And I'm truly living under the belief that when we finally cross that finish line of life, we're going to be in a position where we can celebrate everything right to the last minute of our life, or we can lay in tears and sorrow. You know, I personally have had some really, really awkward situations in my life that have really formed my opinion about enjoying the most of life, making the best of it, taking it right to the end, and enjoying every last minute for everything that it's got to offer. I mean, I spoke of parents recently passing, and everybody has to deal with that, and everybody deals with it in their own way. And it's never easy. Watching, the deterioration, the hospice, the acute care, all of those things that the hospitals are doing so well, working so diligently, trying to, help people, trying to make them better. And then once you finally realize that they're not necessarily going to get better, this staff is unbelievably professional in how they identify how to help people feel better. That not just enjoying the senses and absorbing the moment, because when a person's in hospice, often all they're trying to do is eliminate pain and anguish and suffering. But these professionals often know exactly how to manage that situation. They know exactly, they see it every single day, and absolutely hats off, because these people see it, own it, they're trained for it, but it's empathy, sympathy, it's the feelings, and it's the help that they're offering each and every person that comes through those doors on their feet and unfortunately leaves, usually rolling down the cart. It's a sad state, and it's a hard life. But knowing that, there are people that literally prefer to dwell in negativity and just transform into this person of sadness and sorrow and, walking around with a dark cloud over their head, and would rather just not grasping life for everything it has to offer. And how do people feel when they get to that finish line? What are people often thinking? There's a lot of different thoughts that go through different minds, and again, it's all a matter of perspective. For those people that want to dwell on negativity, they often sit in sorrow and sadness, and there's all kinds of arguments that, there's lots of reasons why people can get, upset and sorrowful in those situations, because they in fact are looking down the barrel of end of life. And it is a sad, sad state of affairs when finally you cross that line. The real question is, what do you do leading up to that when you're fully capable? And the idea of enjoying every sense that you possibly can. Now, I also had my father, and I can speak to that, as his dementia developed and progressed, there was obvious senses that he was losing. But I'd like to believe that he enjoyed every single moment that his family sat at his side. And we'd talk to him for hours on end. And even though, it was quite obvious, in his eyes, you could see it in his eyes, as they were very glossy, he was clearly unable to speak, clearly unable to do a lot of things because he wasn't even really talking or moving around all that much. It's absolutely heartbreaking to see when people go through that and the devastation it brings into the family as a whole. But I almost guarantee you, and I'd like to believe, that even though he lost his ability to talk and maybe even touch and feel because he can no longer move, I'd like to believe he's listening to us. And he was always listening to us when we're sitting there talking, even though we're not getting that response, that he's listening to us and he's listening to everything we're talking about. Because if there's nothing else we have in this world, it's enjoying the senses. I think of that last trip we went into Italy. We went to Europe last year, and I saw so many amazing things that I've never seen before. We saw the Colosseum in Rome. We saw the Amalfi Coast. We lived on the shores there for a while. I had these set of garden doors right across the street from Retiree, which is this little town in the Amalfi Coast. And you open these garden doors, you got the sun beaming in, you got these boats all anchored out in the sea. And this moment of, I could feel the heat and the warmth on my face, the light breeze blowing through my hair, the sounds, people on the beach, buzzing motor scooters I can hear. Every sense is going on high alert, absolutely going full tilt. And when you're in those moments, all you're thinking to yourself is, I don't want this ever to change. I don't ever want to do anything else but what I'm doing right now. This is what life's about. Trying to identify with those things that absolutely make you feel like you're beyond cloud nine. You're up in that 737 looking down at cloud nine because you're even higher than cloud nine. It is absolutely phenomenal. And while it's easy to get down in the dumpers about, we may not live to this, or, life expectancy that, and we talk about this all the time, but really it's not from a perspective of sadness, sorrow, disappointment, stuffing my head in the bin. It's really coming more from the perspective of, let's enjoy life. Why are we wasting our lives being sad, being angry at a toxic job? Why are we sad being around people that are toxic? Why are we sad about when we might die? Why are we sad that we don't have enough money in the bank? Why are we sad that we only have a 20-year-old car? Why are we sad that we only have a 1,000 square foot house? There's so much to be thankful for. There's no reason to be sad. And when you cross that finish line, at the end of the day, all of those senses that I spoke of when I was in Italy should all be crossing your path. That should all be fully engaged. Because why would you possibly want to be down in the dumpers when we have one life and we want to make the best of it? We've got to literally make the best of each and every moment. Now, why do you say that? Why are you so positive? A lot of people have asked me, why are you so focused and so bent on this idea of early retirement? Why are you so bent on not working at a toxic job? Even though I got side hustles, I don't not work. I'm very involved in doing things. As a matter of fact, I just went out and troubleshot some electrical problem at the in-laws' place. They had a problem with a bathroom fan. So, you know what? I dropped everything I did, everything I had going, and I headed on over. And I looked at some of their electrical problems and kind of troubleshot through it, and then I left. Then I proceeded to grab a coffee with my eldest daughter, and that was a great moment too, where we had a few minutes together, had a bit of a brew, and we just enjoyed those moments. And to me, that's what life really is about. Stitching those segments of quality life together to give you the most fulfilled experience. Because when you're crossing that line of life, or the finish line of life, the last thing you want to have is regrets. And so I promise you, from my perspective, whether I die suddenly in a car wreck, whether I die from some chronic condition, whether I die from just old age, or whatever it is, at least if my senses are with me, and I know I'm fully engaged in enjoying each and every one of my senses, that at least those senses are telling me that I'm still enjoying life in some way, whether I'm hearing it, whether I'm seeing it, whether I smell that fresh baked bread. There's so many great things in life, even if you lose some senses along the way. Enjoy it, because working in a toxic work environment is not the scenario that you're ever going to care about when you're at those last moments of your life. And so there's another little story I want to talk about that added a little bit of extra reinforcement, if you will. So I had this experience that you could say I temporarily crossed the finish line and back. In other words, it was what I'd call a near-death experience. And it happened to me at work. And everybody who knows me knows that I've spent a lot of time in the power system industry, in the electrical industry, so to speak. And I want to share a little story about an incident I was involved with that went on to become one of my driving, motivating factors for living life to its fullest. Because after I walked away from that incident, I promised myself, without saying it out loud, I promised internally that one thing is guaranteed. Even when you're young and cocky, you believe you're infallible, you believe that you're here forever. And then a moment like that strikes you in a heartbeat, and your heart can literally stop. Many years ago, I was working on this job, and we were commissioning some new switchgear in this tower downtown. And throughout the day, we had the local utility company was terminating all the cables on the incoming side of the main breaker. And we were working commissioning the switchgear on the load side of that main breaker. And during the day, the equipment was de-energized. I mean, it was just being installed. It was grounded. The new feeder cables were being terminated, so it was quite obviously de-energized. And all this work was going on through the day. Well, as the day progressed, we were working as a subcontractor to a general contractor. And what had happened was, the day progressed, we got further in, and we wrapped up our commissioning activities. We talked, we always communicate, all the tools, grounds, everything's removed. We're good. We've removed all our equipment. We've closed the doors. We had all our test sheets. Everything was collected, and we were good. And we were basically just standing there waiting to energize. Along comes the engineer. Says, did you confirm what size the fuses were on the back of that main breaker? And I said, well, there were no fuses on there, because some breakers incorporated fusing protection as well as the circuit breaker, depending on whether you're looking for thermal protection or magnetic protection. You want quick response, you get fusing involved. Fuses do generally interrupt a lot quicker than circuit breakers. So depending on what the severity and the type of protection, you might incorporate dual protection there. In this case, there were no fuses. Well, and the engineer said to me, well, actually, shows on the drawing there's fuses. There's got to be fuses. I said, there's no fuses. We checked. We validated. There's fuses. This argument kind of went back and forth, and I said, oh. And granted, this was one of those moments, aha moment, early in my career, where you had the pressure, you had a general contractor buzzing around, he was in the room, the engineer's standing there asking me these questions, me and my coworker are looking at each other, there's no fuses. So all this persistence on the engineer's part, the utility guys already just finished up, they left the room. They were gone. So here I was, I decided to, had enough. Okay, I'm done arguing about this. I didn't believe we were going to be energizing because I never heard the conversation. And back in those days, they didn't have a formal process. Now they do. Now they have written paperwork. They have validation for, clearance and, verified. And, there's processes now involved to validate. One person's giving you clearance. It's now safe to work and all of that. So now it's more formal with grounds and checklists and all of that. But back then it was all verbal with the local utility. So they left. We don't know where they went. So after this argument, I grabbed my proximity tester. It's a little tick tracer. I opened the door. I sniffed around in there. And it was de-energized. I checked, validated, double checked, live, dead, live checks, as you know, when you're in the business. I did all those checks and it was fine. It was de-energized. So then quickly I reached in there, slid my hands along the bus bar, because there's 3 phases, A, B, C. Slide one hand on phase A and I'm feeling in there, but I couldn't see it. All I could just feel around the cover, and I'm just sliding phase A. And I did the same thing with my other hand. So I had 2 hands in there feeling phase A and phase C, riding my hands up and down the bus bar to try to feel it. Lo and behold, in a split second, bang, that was it. I literally slammed across the wall. I cut my arms and I sustained a pretty severe shock. Because during that moment, even though we tested and validated, timing was impeccable. It was just, timing was not on my side. And that's really a story about life. We found out later, after I kind of shook it off and I was sort of blacked out, that ultimately the general contractor who was standing in the room when I was doing this, he had a bit of a moment. He said, everything good? Because you couldn't tell. When you get electrified, a lot of times it's not obvious. You don't hear anything. It's just the physical violent motion, which I experienced. He said, I told the utility to turn the power on. What? How's that work? And nobody informed us, and we had our hands in the gear again. Now, granted, this was many moons ago. We always follow the test before touch. But, as life, transition later on, you learn, and those are one of those experiences that I sure learned. You don't trust anybody, nobody. I mean, you can trust your family, but nobody. Assume everybody is lying to you, and it may not be for malicious intent, but there's people that are less skilled, less knowledgeable, and misinformed. And now I realize, and I learned in that moment 2 things. Number 1, you don't trust anybody. You validate. Once you've validated, do not touch anything before you apply grounds. So the grounds then are your protective agent should somebody decide to turn the lights on inadvertently while you're in there. That's your line of defense. It's number one. Second point that I learned that day was after I shook it off, I came out of blackness. I walked out there, I saw burn marks on my hands, that there's more to life than work. Now we all work because we need to pay the bills. But this is one of those situations where there is literally more to life than work, because work can, in some cases, have a negative impact. And on that day, I had a toe over the finish line. And also, since that day, I had this reflection in my mind that life's important, life's too valuable, and I savor every moment that life has to offer. Whether it's that fresh cooking bread or baking bread, whether it's those fresh muffins or donuts, or that fresh cut wood, you know, that smell that you get when you're cutting wood? Oh. Or that smell of the ocean, or the sounds of the waves rushing in. All of those things, my emotions, my senses are always on heightened alert. Because since a moment like that, we realize that I don't want regrets in life. When I'm on my final days, I believe that a lot of people don't appreciate what life has to offer, because it is a gift. And in fact, that's the very thing, those experiences made me a product of my environment. And so as a result of that, I don't waste days. I don't waste hours. I don't waste much time of any, really. Because realistically, we don't know how much time we really have. And so when people question, why are you retiring so early? I really do believe that the more time we spend out savoring and enjoying life, enjoying the birds and the ocean and the smells, and the more we truly enjoy life, and the less we'll have regrets at the end of the road. Again, I truly don't believe riches and wealth comes from zeros in your bank account. While that never hurts, I mean, that certainly buys you flexibility. It buys you the ability to experience some of those things like Italy and some of those things that a lot of people unfortunately can't. It also affords you to take the time off and pay for food and housing. So that's a reality of life that we all just can't ignore. We just cannot. So how do you mitigate that challenge? Well, knowing full well and the passion I have for living life, that passion now has driven me to triple down on my work efforts to get the finances in a position where I can fast track my enjoyment. Now, it seems counterintuitive, but if I'm doubling down on good opportunities, working hard when those experiences and opportunities are available, then I'm going to do it. If it means looking for more efficient ways of earnings, that's the way I was seeing life for the last 10 or 20 years. So then I could get myself into a position where I could enjoy longer, rather than drawing out a long career of working 5-8-hour days on a job, keep buying this endless circle of daily driving cars, this endless circle of spending and pointless, expenditures like high-end clothes. I'd rather wear average stuff. I don't need fancy jewelry. And I've always lived that way. My parents have lived that way. And I truly believe people that figure that out, actually get that sorted out and understood, are the people that truly do enjoy retirement more later in life. Because you do work, you're going to work your buns hard somewhere in life. You're going to do it early in life, and then you're going to coast off into a nice relaxed retirement, or you're going to coast through life and just kind of loaf along, and you might find yourself having to triple down on efforts later on when you should be relaxing and you can't. So the whole idea of commercialism, capitalism is fine. We all like our nice things, but it is in fact a trap. And it gets people locked in front of their cubicles, their offices, working in jobs that they can't stand for people that they hate even more. And realistically, we're all going to cross that finish line sooner or later. And I'm just here to talk about trying to make the most out of life. Do you hear that bird? Do you hear that? Every sound, I could close my eyes right now, and my hearing senses are going full tilt. I hear cars, birds, a little bit of wind in the background, and I love it. I love every single moment of that. And when those moments, like when my parents passed and they were at the end of their days, I know they were living as best they could, enjoying the best of it. We were there with them, trying to just be with the family and, trying to make the best of life as much as it could handle until they couldn't handle the pain. Because at the end of the day, what matters really most in life is life. It's not about that fancy new car that you drove. It's not about living in that big house. It's not about all the widgets and gadgets you bought along the way. What matters is life, how much you've enjoyed it, how much you've made of it, the times you've spent with people you care about, relationships, family, friends, and just getting the most that life has to offer, because it is a gift and not everybody gets to enjoy it.